Richard Harrison had always believed that being a good father meant keeping your professional life and your personal life in separate boxes. For 3 years, he'd managed it perfectly. Drop Maya off at daycare by 7:30, arrive at Harrison and Associates by 8, work until 6, pick up his daughter, go home. Rinse and repeat. At 35, Richard had learned to juggle more than most men his age. Single fatherhood hadn't been part of his plan, but when Maya's mother walked out 6 months after their daughter was born, he'd made a choice. He would be enough. He had to be. The call came at 9:15 on a Thursday morning. Maya's daycare. His daughter had a fever, and they needed him to pick her up immediately. Richard looked at his calendar, wall-to-wall meetings, including the quarterly presentation to the board at 2 o'clock. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said, already closing his laptop. He thought about calling his boss, Catherine Westfield, but she was already in the conference room preparing for the board meeting. He'd figure something out. He always did. Maya was drowsy and warm when he picked her up, her little pink headband slightly askew, clutching the stuffed rabbit she never went anywhere without. At 3 years old, she was his whole world. Bright blue eyes, curious about everything, with a smile that could melt the hardest heart. "Daddy," she murmured, laying her head on his shoulder as he carried her to the car. "Don't feel good?" "I know, sweetheart." "We're going to take care of you." Richard drove back to the office, his mind racing. He had 2 hours before the board meeting. He couldn't miss it. He'd spent weeks preparing the financial projections. His neighbor couldn't help. She was out of town. His sister lived 3 hours away. There was no good option. So he did the only thing he could think of. He brought Maya to work. The offices of Harrison and Associates occupied the top floor of a downtown building. All glass and polish and expensive art on the walls. Richard had worked there for 7 years, rising from junior analyst to senior financial officer. He'd earned his place through long hours and meticulous work. He'd also never brought his daughter to the office, not once. Maya dozed in his arms as he took the elevator up, her little body warm with fever. He'd give her medicine, let her rest on the sofa in his office, and somehow make it through the day. He almost made it to his office unnoticed. "Richard?" Catherine Westfield stood in the hallway, a vision of professional elegance in a cream-colored suit, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat style. At 38, she was one of the youngest CEOs in the industry, known for her sharp mind and sharper business instincts. She'd built Harrison and Associates from a small firm into a powerhouse. She was also, Richard thought with a sinking feeling, not particularly known for her warmth toward personal complications at work. "Ms. Westfield," he said, unconsciously holding Maya a little closer. "I apologize. Daycare called. Maya has a fever. I'll have her settled in my office in just a minute, and I'll be ready for the board meeting." Catherine's expression was unreadable as she looked at the sleeping child in his arms. Richard braced himself for the lecture about professionalism, about keeping personal matters separate, about the importance of today's presentation. Instead, Catherine's expression softened in a way Richard had never seen before. "How old is she?" Catherine asked quietly. 3, just turned 3 last month. "And there's no one else?" Richard shook his head. "It's just us. Has been for a while now." Something flickered across Catherine's face. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. She stepped closer, gently touching Maya's forehead with the back of her hand. "She's burning up," Catherine said. "Come with me." She led Richard not to his office, but to her own, the corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It was twice the size of his space, with a large desk, a sitting area, and a private bathroom. "Put her on the sofa," Catherine said, already pulling a soft throw blanket from a cabinet Richard hadn't known was there. "Does she need medicine?" "I have some in my bag, but—" "Give it to her. I'll postpone the board meeting 2 hours. Ms. Westfield, you don't have to—" Catherine held up a hand. "Catherine, when there's a sick child involved, we're on a first-name basis." She smiled, and it transformed her face. "I'll have my assistant bring up some juice and crackers. Sometimes little ones can keep those down even with a fever." Richard stared at her, this woman he'd worked for but never really known, and felt something shift in his understanding of the world. Over the next 2 hours, Catherine did something remarkable. She didn't just tolerate Maya's presence, she embraced it. When the little girl woke up confused and frightened in a strange place, Catherine sat beside her on the sofa. Speaking in a gentle voice Richard had never heard her use in board meetings. "Hello there, Maya. I'm Catherine. Your daddy works with me and we're going to take care of you today. Are you feeling a bit better?" Maya nodded shyly, still holding her rabbit. "Is that your special bunny?" Catherine asked. "His name is Hoppy," Maya whispered. "Hoppy is an excellent name. You know, when I was a little girl, I had a rabbit just like that. Her name was Snowflake." Richard watched in amazement as his reserved, professional boss connected with his daughter. When Maya asked for her daddy, Catherine brought Richard over but kept talking, telling gentle stories about her own childhood, about a golden retriever named Max, about learning to ride a bicycle. By the time the board meeting started, Maya was asleep again, comfortable on Catherine's sofa, and Richard gave the presentation of his life. He knew the numbers cold, fielded every question with confidence, and when the board approved their expansion plans, he felt a surge of pride. But what stayed with him was the image of Catherine sitting with Maya, holding a juice box steady for small hands, pushing blonde hair back from a fevered forehead with genuine tenderness. After the board left, Richard returned to Catherine's office to collect his daughter. Catherine was at her desk working, but she looked up when he entered. "She's been sleeping peacefully," Catherine said. "I checked on her a few times." "Thank you," Richard said, and he meant it more deeply than he could express. "Not just for the meeting, but for being kind to her." "You didn't have to do that." Catherine stood and walked to the window, her back to him. When she spoke, her voice was softer than usual. "My ex-husband never wanted children," she said quietly. "It was one of the reasons we divorced. He thought they would complicate things, interfere with our careers." She turned to face Richard. "But watching you with Maya, seeing how you didn't hesitate to put her first, even with the board meeting, that's not a complication. That's what matters." Richard saw something in her eyes then, loneliness maybe, or regret. This brilliant woman who'd built an empire had missed something along the way. "She's lucky to have you," Catherine continued. "And you're lucky to have her." "I am," Richard agreed. "Even on the hard days I am." Maya stirred then, sitting up and rubbing her eyes. When she saw Catherine, she smiled. "Hi, Miss Catherine." "Hi, sweetheart. Are you feeling better?" Maya nodded. "Can we come back and visit you?" Catherine's face lit up with genuine joy. "I would love that." Over the following weeks, something shifted at Harrison and Associates. Catherine started leaving at 6 instead of 8. She asked Richard about Maya, remembered details about the little girl's life. She suggested the company implement better parental leave policies, more flexible working arrangements, and slowly, carefully, Catherine and Richard began spending time together outside the office. Coffee on Saturday mornings while Maya played at the park. Dinner at family-friendly restaurants where Catherine learned to cut chicken, nuggets into kid-sized pieces. Richard watched Catherine transform from the cool, professional CEO into a woman who laughed at a 3-year-old's. Knock-knock jokes and didn't mind getting her expensive. Suit dirty on the playground slide. 6 months after that Thursday morning, Richard and Catherine sat on a bench watching Maya chase butterflies in the park. The little girl's laughter rang out across the grass, pure and joyful. "I never thought I'd have this," Catherine said quietly, taking Richard's hand. "A family! Someone who sees me as more than just a CEO. I never thought I'd find someone who could love Maya as much as I do," Richard replied. Catherine squeezed his hand. "She's easy to love. So is her father." Maya ran over then, breathless and happy. "Catherine! Did you see? I almost caught one." "I saw. You were so close." Catherine lifted Maya onto her lap, and the little girl settled there naturally as if she belonged. Richard watched them together and thought about that Thursday morning, about the desperate choice he'd made to bring his sick daughter to work. He'd expected judgment, maybe even consequences. Instead, he'd found grace, understanding, love. "Daddy," Maya said, looking at him with those bright blue eyes, "can Catherine come to my birthday party?" Richard looked at Catherine, who was already nodding, her eyes bright. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," Catherine said. That night after Maya was asleep, Catherine and Richard stood in his kitchen drinking tea. The house was modest compared to Catherine's downtown penthouse. but she'd told him it felt more like home than anywhere she'd ever lived. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if that daycare hadn't called?" Catherine asked. "Every day," Richard said. "I think about all the ways that morning could have gone differently." "I'm glad it went the way it did," Catherine said. "You know, I built a company thinking that was enough. Achievement, success, respect. But it wasn't enough. It was just empty." She set down her tea and took both of Richard's hands. "You and Maya, you filled something I didn't even know was missing." Richard pulled her close. This remarkable woman who'd opened her heart to a single father